The special called meeting for the Danville City Commission for today, Wednesday, April the 12th. The hour is 11:40, and we will begin. We're all present and accounted for, and I'd like to introduce to each of us and to the city collectively, Miss Susanna Massey Thomas, who hails from the fine city and community of I guess you would say Harrodsburg, Kentucky, somewhere between Harrodsburg and Bergen and Shakertown, in a beautifully restored log cabin. So, yeah, we should have had this there. I'm sorry.
What was I thinking? Good morning.
Yeah, this is mine. That's yours.
Okay, so.
So good morning, everyone. I'm really, really excited to be here. Yes, I hail from Harrodsburg, the city's, the state's first community, but come on, you gotta love Danville, right? So, because it's so special. So I was very, very excited when my old friend Mike reached out to me. He knows that I have done a lot of strategic planning and visioning over the years, and that since I left the Kentucky Horse Park, where I was executive director of a not-for-profit that reschooled and adopted out thoroughbred racehorses for 13 years. I thought I wanted to stay closer to home, be with my wonderful husband, Jim Thomas, who ran Shakertown for 41 years, and apply those skills of strategic visioning, life coaching, leadership elsewhere. So that is why that I'm here, is to help this wonderful group of individuals who are leading this wonderful city to get to know one another better, discuss communication styles. I hear that the lovely Jenny Holland, who I have known for quite a few years because of her wonderful store and her knowledge of wellness, which is very important to me personally. I know that Jenny is new, and I just thought that when Mike reached out and said we all need to communicate, get on the same page because Jenny's new, I thought, well, let's do it. So this meeting is going to have sort of three sections. I'll tell you a little bit briefly about the format. Then I want to ask you questions about you and have you all tell something about yourselves. I gave you a values handout, or I think Ashley sent that to you. I thought that would be interesting for people to kind of hone in on what's most interesting to them as a leader of this wonderful community. And then just takeaways, how you want to move forward, make sure that everybody is, feeling united and progressive. So the topic of this wonderful luncheon is just communication styles. Because what I have found in my years of working in various venues, I was telling, Earl, that I've worked with civil engineers, with the DOT. I've been on the governor's task force. I've drafted some legislation. I've done a lot of visioning things. And communication is usually the sticky wicket. And a lot of cross wires happen, misunderstandings, hard feelings, a lot of what we call catabolic energy, negative energy. There's no need for that. You all are on this team because you care about this community and you want to make a difference and you want to represent the people that you care about. So if by chance there are some communication issues, by God, let's find out what's important to you and what your communication style is. We will keep track of time. People help me because I tend to get so interested in what you all are saying that I can get lost in your stories. So who is my civil engineer, he's good with numbers. So I'll have him kind of say hello, and you can do whatever you want. Jig, come up, smack me, whatever you want to do. Or, hey, you, shut up, whatever you need to do. So that's what we're going to do today. And, that's basically it. There are a few rules. And the rules have to do with communication. We will, when somebody is talking, no matter how much we want to butt in and share our wonderful ideas, just kind of raise your hand or let me know, and then I'll call you because it's really important. Some of us, like me, are oral processors. So our ideas get jumbled in our heads, and we don't really get them out clearly until we've sort of babbled them out. We need to respect that for people. We also really need to try to listen. One thing that I've learned from many, many decades of working with horses is all you have is the now. And if you're thinking about your to-do list or this or that or whatever, guess what? You might miss something really important that may be just expressed in tone of voice, body language, you never know. So it's really, really important to try to understand, to listen, to understand, and then make your thoughts, okay? So we're not gonna interrupt, we're gonna respect, we're gonna listen, and if we agree to disagree, that's absolutely fine, but it's all gonna be done in a tone of our authentic selves, okay? Everybody happy with that? So, for starters, I want to tell you that I am a fourth-generation Kentuckian. My father was born in Lexington. My grandfather ran a boarding school for boys and for sales, where Happy Chandler was the football coach. My great-grandfather was dean of the Episcopal Church in Lexington. My mother was Swiss, and my dad was in the Navy. He met her in Europe. And so, unfortunately, I was born in New York City and grew up in that area and in Europe because of my mother's heritage. And went to work in New York after college. And I just knew I had to get to Kentucky. So I borrowed a car, printed out gazillion resumes, left them at horse barns all down the coast, found a job working for a vet in Versailles, which I didn't find out till many years later when I went to get married, that my grandfather was actually on the vestry of that church where I was married. He died when my father was quite young from cancer, and so that's a whole nother story. So that's how I ended up being a New Yorker. But I knew from the moment I crossed the border at Ashland with the plant's fire belching its fumes up into the air that I was home, right? Right. I'll tell you another really quick story. I was working for this veterinarian. I worked 6.5 days a week. He let me have the Easter afternoon off. And I thought, Lexington's a small town, right? I'm from New York, New York. I'll go and see where my grandparents are buried and put some flowers on their graves. I got to the Lexington Cemetery. It was closed because the office was closed. And you know what? There were over 100,000 people buried there. And I went, oh. So what did I do? I just kind of said, okay, Lord, whatever. Do you know I walked right to their graves? And they were ministers and school teachers, right? So we are not talking monuments. The graves were about twice the size of this piece of paper. All right, so that is part of my personal belief that we all are here for a reason. We all have guidance from somewhere else. When we listen to our authentic selves, that's how we know that we're on track. And the biggest thing is we are here to serve something bigger than ourselves. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to all of you, because you have each chosen to give your most precious asset, which is your time, for your community. So without further ado, let's have you just sort of go down the line. We'll start momentarily. We'll listen to Mike in a second, but we'll start with Kevin. So I'm going to have you think about this. Just tell us a little bit about your background, your vision for why what you wanted to do, why you chose to serve, and what you want to achieve, and then your strengths. So be musing over that, my dear. Perfect. Yep, I'll be mindful. So what we're going to do in this phase, we're going to try to wrap this up in about 10 minutes, so we can go on to the values and the visioning. And if there's anything of note, which I'm sure there'll be a lot, I don't know if I have any, here, markers here. I hope you're okay if I just jot down a few things that I might think, oh, that's interesting. How can we all use that to work together? So, Kevin, would you kindly tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, ma'am. Kevin Cottle, and this is after this term will be my 18th year on the City Commission.
Wow.
I was actually born in Danville, but my father worked for the federal government, so we moved away shortly thereafter and lived all over the southeast, and I came back here when I was about 12 or so. And our family's always just been really involved in community events and public service, and so it's kind of just been something that I grew up with and have always enjoyed. And my mother was on the city commission and passed away, so I got to fill out the rest of her term, and I sort of got the bug at that point of, I love the town. I've lived a lot of places, and I think this is the best one, of course. And but I found it to be, as a younger person, sort of a cliquish, stodgy, stuck in the mud kind of place, and my hope was, through this avenue, is to maybe pull us out of that a little bit and get us, more modern, more up-to-date, more appealing to young people and that kind of thing.
So let me just make sure that I heard everything. You were born here, but you moved away. You've lived in lots of places, and you have a family background in service. Mm-hmm. And you've gotten the bug because of that, but also because you felt you're a proponent for change, mm-hmm. and you want to bring in youth so that they can embrace this wonderful community. Is that sort of the gist?
That's a very good synopsis, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so your vision, is it safe to say your vision is that you want to help this community modernize or adapt to change, and youth is a big focus of yours?
That's very true. There's not, we're refocusing our economic development, and I would hope that one of our areas of concentration would be those jobs that keep our younger kids, our young college grads, in town rather than heading to Lexington, Louisville, Nashville, or wherever they head now. So.
Sure. So am I to read between or listen between the lines and hear that education is also something that's important to you, or does
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Great. Are there any specific initiatives right now that you are working on that are very dear to your heart?
Not really related to any of that. I'm the board chair of the local ASAP group, and it's a substance abuse and policy group. And
no doubt you have many strengths. But of them, what would you say is your greatest strength, or the strength that you get the most joy out of, or that you just nail it?
I learn more, and my favorite thing to do is listen. Just as you mentioned, I think I've learned more with my mouth shut than I have with it open, so I try to do that as much as possible. And I don't bat 1,000. Sometimes I hear, but I don't listen. So that's a skill I need to keep improving on.
That is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's what my wife told me, exactly, yeah.
And one last little trick question.
Sure.
Is there something about you that is really special, but that nobody really knows, that you can share with us? For example.
How big does it have to be?
Well, for example, I once applied for a job with the circus in between my freshman and sophomore years of college. And I got the job. But a week before I went off to the circus, they told me the grant from Planters Peanuts didn't come in. So they weren't taking the horses. But did I want to take care of the elephants? And I thought, 3 months of elephant excrement? Not so much.
Yeah,
Not so much. So something a little unusual about yourself that you could share.
Let me think. I don't know how many people know this, but when we lived in Atlanta, I was a page for the legislature, and I got to serve Andrew Young, and he and I just kind of bonded one day, and I was his go-to page, and that was kind of neat, and not a nicer guy on the planet, by the way. And I've just always remembered that. That happened when I think I was in 6th grade, but I could remember like it was yesterday.
Wow.
It's just a runner, exactly. Go get coffee, go make copies, all kinds of stuff.
Miss,
What's that?
thank you.
Exactly, that's me.
So, Miss Denise, tell us a little bit about your bank. Thank you so much, Kevin. That was very good.
Get my microphone to work here. Well, I am born and raised in Danville. I've never lived outside this county. Sometimes I think that's a
lucky you.
good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. But I've never lived outside this county. And so I kind of got the bug to serve when I had a business downtown and I was living downtown. And I realized that every decision that was made affected me. So I might as well be part of the process. I began my service by serving on the Heart of Danville board. And so this term will make my 8th year, is that right? Yeah, 8 years serving on the city commission. And I started going to meetings about 2 years prior to running for office and quickly realized that my generation was not present. So my goal is to leave a legacy for future generations, because I do have young children, and well, they're not so young anymore, but like Kevin, I would like reasons for them to come back here and be able to live and thrive and raise their families. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And were you a realtor? Was
I
that your
am
business?
currently a realtor. I made a career change almost 3 years ago now. And prior to that, I actually owned and operated a day spa. So wellness has also been most of my life.
Wonderful.
I am a nail tech. I still have a few clients that I see, but we offered massage, facials, manicures, pedicures for several years here. And so I actually have been a nail tech for almost 20 years now, total,
Wow.
which is the longest I've stuck with anything, including a man. So there we go.
Wow. Well,
My current husband hopes to change that.
I know who to come to if I need I always need my nails done because I work on a farm, right? So you
Right.
should have seen them this morning. I had to dip them in Clorox to get them presentable for
Well,
you
I do
all.
that on a very limited basis now, but if you need some help, I can help you.
Thank you so very much. And what is your greatest strength, other than doing nails?
Oh, I forgot about that. Forgot that part. I'm a people person, so I can usually find a way to connect and communicate with just about everyone.
You are a networker. That is awesome. And what is something special, unusual about you that you would care to share?
You used to have antlers.
I used to have antlers, really? I was the lead role in a musical in the 4th and 6th grades.
Oh my gosh. Wow,
What were they?
You don't want to know.
Yes, I do. By golly, I do.
We're going to put
I'm
you.
also an avid reader, so.
Is there video, Denise?
It is under lock and key.
Wow. Well, I'll need to get your autograph. We didn't know we had a leading lady in our midst.
Yeah, I do have it on my bucket list to be in a play at West T Hill. Not a musical.
Most excellent.
You don't want me to be in a musical now.
Excellent. All right, our leading man here. Mike, tell us something.
I'm from Danville. My father was born here, as well as my mother. My grandfather immigrated here from the island of Crete in 1915. we got 100-plus years. Whether that's good or bad, I'll let everybody decide. I was fortunate enough, my first job out of college was to travel for my fraternity, and every 2 to 4 days, I was in a different setting with a different group of people, with a different set of problems. And what I got out of that is you have to meet people at a level, but I also realized that this is a unique part of the country. And there's a lot of parts of this country that you couldn't melt me and pour me in. But it really makes you realize that the bluegrass area and Kentucky, for all of its warts, I'll leave it that way, it's still a pretty special place. When I came back to Danville, we were told, hey, you get involved in community service. That way you get to know people, that way you're paying something back to your community. So on the vestry of my church, president of the UK Alumni Association, in fact, myself and probably a handful of others started the local chapter here. I was president of the Red Cross, two-term president of the Heart of Danville, and two-term president of the Chamber of Commerce. In all of that, the reason I share that is because in all that I learned that no matter how much we tried to affect change, we really couldn't move the needle. And that's one of the reasons. That's one of the big reasons why I ran for this position, because I wanted to move the needle. I saw some major things that needed to occur, and it's taken a few years, but I think we're there in a lot of areas and rapidly getting there in some others. What else would you like to know? I'm a music lover.
Good. You're a musician, too.
I've been playing drums for 58 years, and can't get enough of that. I like to fly when I can. I love boating.
Yesterday was 420, so.
Huh?
Yesterday was 420,
I know it. Fortunately, I got a lot of habits. That's not one of them. What else?
Well, let me make sure that I heard all of this correctly. You're first generation from island of Crete. You were born here and you love it here.
No, my grandfather was first generation.
Ah, okay.
I'm third.
So.
But who's counting?
Third. Okay, this is why it's good to hear this. And your first job involved a lot of travel. What was your first job in?
I was chapter consultant for my fraternity, Delta Tau Delta, headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Wow, okay.
Hmm?
Yeah.
That was the last thing I wanted to do.
You mentioned a lot of community service.
Yep.
That was a sort of family expectation, much like Kevin. And, I'm just putting these things that I'm hearing, and I couldn't keep up with you, but that's just for you all to sort of look over and say, who did he say was? And you are a jack of all trades, a master of many. I know this, having known Mike for many years. And love music and flying and service and all of that. So what would you say is your greatest strength?
It may also be one of my greatest challenges, and that is if I have a talent, it's to identify something that needs to occur. And it's something that others have chosen not to address. And those are the kinds of things that I like to be tenacious about. Sometimes in that process, there's a little blood on the floor. John Kaywood and I were the two instigators of taking Danville wet. And there were a lot of folks that didn't like us doing that. But it was a clear belief of mine, and it was just based on economics. Just based on economics. And you'll recall that Garrett County went wet first. And that put the fear in everybody. And it was at the end of the 08-09 real estate debacle. And so there were a lot of people out looking for jobs. And economic development, whatever it took for economic development, that was the atmosphere at the time. So we kind of jumped through that window, but it was not readily accepted.
So what I'm hearing is that Mike has this unusual strength and addiction to knocking his head against walls.
Yeah.
Because he seems to love the sound, the music they make when the walls crack. That kind of sum it up, Mike?
I bet it's never been put that way to you
Yeah.
Well, the head against the wall part, yes, I've had many a time.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you're hard-headed, Mr. Paris.
Yeah, I'm hard-headed for about the next 2 years, and then I will check the box that I've run my race, and I'll leave it at that. One thing that might be of interest that probably nobody here knows is that I had 2 majors in college.
Interesting.
One in production agriculture, and the other one in agronomy. Agronomy. Science of plants.
So,
No, because I want to go back to being a farmer. I love the farm. It's a grounding place. But at the time of 1981, interest rates were 18%. And my only all-nighter at college was we had to do a farm plan. And I mean, my farm plan, it was cheesecloth thin, where I had erased, put in new numbers, erased, and I don't care how much I fudged it, the numbers weren't gonna come out. And I thought, well, that's great, after 5 years, here I am looking at a big goose egg, so anyway, that's that.
well, thank you for that. Miss Jenny, tell us about you. Please.
My least favorite thing to do is talk, let alone talk about myself. So this is very uncomfortable, to be honest with you. So I guess the first question was,
It's
where
just your
you're from?
background,
Okay.
where you were born.
I was born in Glasgow, Kentucky. And then we moved across a couple states, grew up in Ohio. I'm still known as a Yankee around here, although I've been here for 30 years. I am always an outsider. And then moved back to Kentucky after being in Ohio. Loved it.
And where did you move in Kentucky?
Danville.
Danville.
Yep.
So Glasgow, Ohio, Danville.
Well, Connecticut too. So-
Details.
I was little, those don't count.
Right,
Yeah.
those don't count. Okay, okay.
So, what else do you want to know?
So then you
I
moved to
have to talk about-
Danville. Tell us about your interest in wellness. When did that begin?
Okay, well, I don't know if I want to tell this story, but.
Oh, well, that fits into the
Well,
interesting
that's
thing.
true. So I went to college for business and also mission work. And the fellow I was serious with also was going for business and mission work, and we were going to do finance or accounting and be like self-supporting missionaries. That was my plan. And in my junior year, we both did our mission trips.
Where'd
I
you
went-
go?
He went to Russia, I went to Africa for at least a month. Very life-changing. It was always my dream growing up to go to Africa. Zambia, Southwest, yeah. Ended at Victoria Falls, the most gorgeous waterfall in the universe. And I came back and almost died. So I was very, very ill, as were a couple others. 2 from our church passed away, or that were traveling with our church, not our, but. And
My goodness.
I could not finish out my degree and had to come to Danville. And after some time, I was able to get diagnosed, proper treatment, because people don't know how to treat things overseas around here. You just go to doctor to doctor to doctor. And I slowly got better over about 1.5 years. Went back to college and decided to start all over and became a health educator and wellness and Parks and Rec. Kind of got everything in and went to Eastern and was very, I felt like I had a second chance at life. So anyway, it was hard going through so many health challenges for 1 year, 1.5 years, but
Wow.
it was a learning experience.
Would you feel comfortable telling us what it was?
Some things were unknown.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I lost 1 pound a week for almost 6 months straight, and finally found that I had different parasitic infections. And
Wow.
yeah, it was
Wow.
pretty bad. So, and then you have damage from all those issues. So,
Right.
just things you don't find in Danville, Kentucky. You know?
Wow.
So that got me into health and wellness, and I still had a lot of lingering health issues for about 5 years that I sought alternative care to heal,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and so I could, you know, be
Makes-
healed fully from some things. So
How'd they
anyway,
find what it was?
I don't want to say. I'll tell you
Well,
afterwards.
That's a rabbit hole that,
Though you don't want the details of how you find
was
certain.
there
no, Mike, we're heading down a rabbit hole. This is wonderful conversation. This is why I'm having you do this, so that you all were like, tell us about the leading role.
Yeah, so
leading
I will
lady.
tell more. I will tell more
So
later.
just
But anyway, so what I do after that?
Well, tell us about your greatest strength.
My greatest strength, I don't know. I like to do everything right. I like
Okay.
to be detailed.
So you're
And
detail
I get
oriented.
quite a bit obsessed sometimes to do things
That
right.
is awesome.
Of course,
Detail oriented. And then why did you want to serve?
lots of reasons. Well, I guess I kind of got the bug set when I was in planning. I thought I'd take a break from traveling and the stresses of district management. And I had a child with some health issues, so I thought, I need a regular 8 to 5 job. And that just showed up. And I thought, you know, be careful what you wish for, right? I missed what I had. So I did that for 3 years, and I went to different meetings and often watched these meetings, and very embarrassed I got caught up in them and would have to finish watching them at home and see what happened. And my husband's like, Jenny, you're a nerd. And I guess Denise was a little bit of a nerd too, because she liked to come to meetings. So I would not admit it. I would not admit to it. And
Why? It shows how much you care about your community.
that is. And I thought, what can I do?
You and Denise both,
And I got
all of you.
involved with March of Dimes. You know, you want to give. And I was actually going to go run for magistrate. And in the office, they said, oh, here's the application. Bring it back to, the girls told me it was that I could do that. It was something on my heart. I wanted to see youth, later meetings, some differences there. And I actually put up a store for sale, and I prayed about it and said, God, if I sell the store, then I'll have time and I'll serve. I go back in, oh, we were wrong, it's for commissioner. I said, even better, that's the way God's leading me. You know, I just feel like you just keep stepping through doors. And so I was like, okay, well, that's what I'm meant to run for. And I sold the store, and so I'll go run. So I see things more like in a spiritual sense, and you just step forward. And then what I did, and I just will hold it up if you want to. So I kind of walked around town for 4 months and asked people door to door what they wanted, because I didn't think I should do what I want, you know, and just try to get a feel from the public. So I kind of had a very general.
You brought it with you?
I brought it with me. But anyway,
Wow.
I just had a general feel like, you know, I want to be transparent with spending, because I thought, you know, I wasn't always transparent. And I wanted to be accessible to people, because sometimes, you know, you can't always get a hold of leaders. And anyway, but I thought, well, I'll walk and just see what people care about the most. And that's what I'll run on. So that's.
And
what I
Jenny,
did.
have you had an opportunity to share that? I know that you're fairly newly elected, but with the mayor and with your fellow commissioners?
Not really. Not really. I mean, if
Well,
anybody wants
how
to-
many of you would like to see Jenny's research?
But
Absolutely, right? So that's the kind of thing that I'm sure, if you all are anything like me, my to-do list is woo, right? And when I get up in the morning, it's Monday, and I put my head on the pillow at night, it's Friday. So it's really hard to make time to do that, and maybe Jenny has been the same way. But if she's done that kind of research, might be good, since you're representing the entire community, to
yeah. And my nerdy
Sure that-
self, you know, I had the paper map and I marked each
Oh.
region, and I found that this demographic cared about this, and this demographic, like soon as you left some neighborhoods, like in town, different vibe. Go out to Bluegrass Pike, different vibe. So then you kind of get a feel for what different people cared about. And you want to kind of meet the needs of everybody. And
Don't you
see what-
love a detail-oriented
But
person?
anyway, what I was trying to find was, what does everybody want? Whether you're conservative, liberal, old, young, male, female, what does everybody have a common issue on? So that was kind of my goal too, to see where there was overlap. So anyway.
Clearly a great service. I'm going to take your harrowing experience and all of your mission trip as your special thing that nobody knows about you.
Yes, that's good. We don't need any more.
No. All of you have tons of stories that you tell. I mean, I went over places like Kevin lived.
Oh, yeah.
I got to hear more about the leading lady and Mike, you know, he's always ordering olive oil. He's doing all these incredible things.
Cool.
Not to mention his
Cool.
musical career. So we'll have to have lunch.
Okay, now we
We
move
haven't
it.
got any olive oil. We haven't got any olive oil.
Let's get that.
Those are all the names he told me.
Oh.
It was like if you said pick one, I'm like, okay, I kind of like Katie would be good looking.
You didn't write it down, though, did you?
No, but now they're on television and being recorded. So the people of your community can know how you like to be called. Without further ado, would you care to tell us a little bit about your background and who you are?
Yeah, I'll tell you a few things. There are a lot of things I don't want to tell you off camera. I came this morning expecting to share some things that I've changed my mind. I was born in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Fredericksburg, Virginia. Fredericksburg. The Battle of Fredericksburg. My dad was stationed at Camp A.P. Hill outside of Fredericksburg, and he met my mom, and so we moved from Fredericksburg to Lexington. I was raised in Lexington. And I always tell folks that I'm young enough to where in this life of mine, I've lived during segregated times, I've lived in integrated times, and now I'm living during what I call resegregation or disintegration. That our country's gone through 3 major changes in my young 39 years, okay? I'm an educator by trade, by profession. I'm a historian. I am trying to become Professor John W. Bate. That's my current research, is that I'm researching the life and times of John Bate, who Bate Middle School is named after. And he served there for 55 years at the school that he founded here in Danville. So, and I'll call out the name Cecil Cohen. Cecil Cohen met me my first or second year in Danville. He began calling me Professor Atkins. And at the time I said, well, I'm just a I'm just an 8th grade social studies, history, civics teacher, but I think Cecil Corn wanted me to find out about Professor John W. Bate, and if I stayed in Danville long enough, he thought it would be somebody that I'd be interested in to follow their career. And it ended up being a very unique connection between the two of us. Okay?
So are you still a teacher? And are you at big school?
I am a retired educator. I am still teaching. I am preparing tonight to go to Board County Middle School and Board County High School next Friday to do some lessons with their 8th graders and their seniors. We're doing some work on the status of race relations in our country in 2021.
And when did you move to Danville?
Oh, wow. Well, I got recruited by the late Alex Stevens, and he recruited me out of the Black Mafia in Lexington. I came to Danville for 2 weeks and got drafted by Uncle Sam, and then came back and been here for about 5 years since then. So been here for a long time.
So, give me a year
A year for what, ma'am?
when you actually, your affiliation with Danville, so we can just.
Oh, okay, hold on. 1972.
When you were, in Swallowing Close?
No, I was just 13. No, I came here in 1972, taught middle school for 2 weeks and got called into the military, got drafted. And then came back in 74 and.
Were you in Vietnam?
No, ma'am, praise the Lord, I did not go. I went from Danville to Fort Knox to Fort Gordon, Georgia, which felt like Vietnam in some ways. And then I ended up at Fort Campbell and lived in Clarksville, Tennessee for a while. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
why did you choose to serve this community?
Well, I taught 8th grade history, and I taught government, and I taught what I call civics. And I always told 8th graders that if I ended up living in Danville long enough, I would run for political office. And I call myself a public servant, not a politician. But I wanted the 8th graders, if they decide to stay in town, they'd have a chance to vote for or against me in the political arena. And so I call myself, quote unquote, a servant leader. And I say that because I'll have 12 years pretty soon. And I ran on a platform that I had no hidden agenda. And I still stand by the platform. I have no hidden agenda, except what's best for this town, this community.
I love that.
Doesn't work all the time, but I tell people that.
Nothing works all the time. If everything worked all the time, life would be boring.
Ooh, yeah, that's right.
Number two, both of my parents, my father was deceased, but both of my parents are biographers of history.
Wow.
Written a number of books. My mother, just a moment of my bragging, she's 90. She just went back to Russia, and she was the one who gave Ronald Reagan the added trust but verified.
Oh, wow.
That's a whole other story.
Wow.
that we'll get
Wow.
That's your
into.
mother?
Wow.
I'll tell you about.
Well,
Wow.
She was not a government person. She was a household mother and a writer of Russian history and more on that. But, so, one of the things that the Russians say is they do not pay attention to history is like a lobotomist in the community, the population. So, thank God for people like you, who, seriously, and I mean that, who show us that we move forward carefully and reasonably by looking back and being mindful of what we've come through. And it is so heartbreaking to see like what's happening now on so many levels, how we are making the same mistakes over and over because we don't pay attention to history. So you are not allowed to retire. You must keep teaching until you're 129. If you all agree, raise your hand.
that's a long way off though, right? Since I'm just 39, right?
All raise your hands. Haley, you have to raise your hand. Come on. Yep.
Haley's my friend.
So many, many thanks for that.
Thank you.
I can hear a lot of great strengths there. Your humility, your perseverance, your intelligence, things. I'm sure there are many, many more. Which one is the one that you're proudest of?
Well, I am really an introvert in drag. All right? And so my greatest strength is that I pride myself in the ability to be able to listen to people. And when I say listen, it's about being able to hear. You know, people listen to me all the time, but they never hear me. There's a difference. Doesn't mean I agree. It just means I'm listening, I hear you.
That is beautiful. You make a really, really good horse trainer. So, in your spare time, if you want to come help me with some of my retired thoroughbreds.
Okay.
Come on, because horses, because they are not human, people think they don't talk.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you deal with something like a thoroughbred, it's very, makes you very nervous. You got to be exactly.
They're temperamental,
Like, hey,
yeah.
good looking,
Yeah.
James, Mr. Atkins. So, is there any sort of story that you'd like to tell about yourself?
Well, yeah, I think I need, because of what's happened to me here recently, I think I need to tell a story. I've lived all my life advocating that all lives matter. I started last year, 2020. Didn't have nothing to do with COVID, but just because of all the social injustice that was going on. I started saying Black Lives Matter, not related to an organization, but to the fact that black and brown people are under attack in this country in 2020 and 2021. So I don't apologize when I say today Black lives do matter. When I ask somebody to focus on the fact that Black lives matter, I'm asking you to focus on all lives matter, but with a concentration on what's happening in our world today to people of color. You know, I speak up for my Asian brothers and sisters just like I speak up for any other person of color, marginalized people. But I tell folks that I have to speak up with the fact that if I don't say it, I can't depend on anybody else to say it. So if it offends someone, please accept the fact that I'm pre-forgiving you, so I want you to pre-forgive me, and that we listen to each other and find out what's the real message behind what I'm trying to say.
Well, what I hear is that you are a great humanitarian. And
Yeah.
because you have an ethnic affiliation with a disenfranchised community who doesn't have a voice, you're taking that voice, you're speaking that voice for them to speak what you believe.
Yeah.
That all lives matter, and you have this affiliation with this particular group who need to have a voice and who needs to be heard. And thank God we had the George Floyd case yesterday. We saw, and I'm just telling you what I think. I think that made a huge statement that all lives matter. Regardless of what anyone thinks about George Floyd and his past history, that is not, we do not solve problems by murdering people. Period. End of story. And those who do need to have a repercussions. So forgive me for, as I say, I ask for forgiveness from all of you for stating my truest feelings, but I believe that we're all children of God. And it doesn't matter, we all should be respected, and we all live under the same law. Certainly in this country. So, now that I've gotten on my soapbox, as my little boys used to call it, Mom, you're on your soapbox again. Let's go get out your value sheets. I want to thank you all for sharing about you and who you are and why you've chosen to serve in all your different ways. There are some great strengths here. You know, networking, listening, detail, compassion, generosity, hard-headedness, wanting to solve problems, strategic thinking. Oh my God, this community is so lucky and to have all of you. So thank you for sharing all of that. I hope there are many, many people watching and listening and proud of all of you as a result. So, let's see, we'll start at the other end of the table. And if you have something that you did this early, you want to share too, please do. And you too, Haley. But So we might have a value, but we don't often put it into action. So with all that, you may still be left with 15 values that you'll constantly put into action. But for purpose of this meeting and the things that you want to, that you value, that you want to put into action for the benefit of this community, because that's why we are here, could you share with me your top? And I'll write them down and we'll see where the common ground is.
You want my top 1, my top 5, my top 25, or what do you want?
Let's just go with, let's see, how about 7? That's a good number.
Oh, I don't have that many. Well, okay. I keep saying, and I don't know where this fits in this, but we hold these truths to be self-evident that all people are created equal, that they're endowed with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And that's just me, and where that fits in this values thing, I kept looking for something that says spiritualism, but spiritualism is an important value of mine.
Equality and spirituality.
Okay.
You got 5 more.
Trust is on here, I'm sure, someplace, right?
Under T down there somewhere.
Honesty is probably someplace on here.
Honesty. It's probably under H. I put it in there, and if I didn't, that's where I left blanks for you all to fill in whatever I didn't think of.
Well, and I collaboration, I think we get more done when we work together. And then based on some recent conversations that I had, I'm going to say courtesy.
Courtesy, love
Really
that.
important for
So
me to be courteous
trust,
to people.
Honesty, collaboration, and courtesy. That's 7, you all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Y'all want more?
Well, I guess I'll go with the environment, the importance of the environment, and then I'm thinking infrastructure as well as green space when I say environment.
Okay, Miss Jenny. Thank you, Gage.
Boy, some good ones on here, though. Wow.
There's so many good ones I
Yeah.
can decide.
Well, that's where I said the action, because obviously we all value all of those things on there.
Right,
Some of
right.
us may not value fun.
Well, I'll go A through Z and just pick some that I picked, because I probably picked
But I'm
triple.
looking at ones that,
Our
there's
favorite.
so much about them that you know you do them, because that's where we're going to tie into how we want to communicate and help this community. Because you have a
Okay.
track record of doing that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna say truth first,
Truth? Okay.
service second. Well, I'm just going in order. It's not like my first
Doesn't matter.
choice.
Sure.
Okay, truth, service, kindness, human rights, environment, I guess equality is the same as human rights, do you think?
Nope. Not necessarily.
No, that's true. Equality, concern for others. I'm going too fast.
You have 7.
I do? Okay. Yay.
Mayor Paris.
And how many do you want? 7?
7.
Oh, Lord. Preservation, service, vision, human rights, change, community, is that 7?
That's 7.
Okay.
I have communication. Consistency. Courtesy. It's already up there somewhere. equality, integrity, kindness, I think it's already up there, and vision. I actually have an eighth one. Can I put an eighth one up there? Fun.
Yay! Mr. Kevin?
Ma'am, concern for others, equality, encouragement, flexibility, honesty, respect, and trust.
That's one extra.
Oh, yeah?
Maybe, I don't know. Okay. So, from this, we can tell the top value for all of you is equality, which is great. But we can also tell that communication, which is actually the topic of this workshop, only has one person who puts that into practice. Miss Haley, of course. See, I get so excited that it's like, oh, these wonderful ideas. So what does that tell you all? Right? That communication is something that obviously it's important because of all these things, but you only have one person here who makes it a top value that she works on. I never could get my snowsuit on by myself.
So
Thank you, Derek.
That would tell me that either we think we do it well enough, or we don't know how to do it better.
Right. What does that tell you, Denise?
You want my honest answer?
Of course.
No.
Yeah, I thought, didn't you
Never
say
do that.
honesty?
I never do that, do I?
Hey,
I feel like our communication as a commission is not as good as it has been.
interesting. Okay. What about you, Mike? What does this say to you?
Communication? Is that the question?
Well, we know that your top value is equality, and there's actually a lot of all the things that you had, right? You had 30 some odd. You've picked a lot of the same things. So you are basically the same kind of people on the same kind of page. But the topic for this workshop is communication, right? So, and there's only one person who has that as a value, who says she practices it as regularly as she can. That's why I set those up in the different columns, because I am sure that all of you, when you look at that value sheet, would want to check almost all of them, right? But the ones you actually are active in, and I'm sure there were more than 8 or 7, however many you, because you are the wonderful, amazing people that we have seen in the first half of this meeting. We know that about you now. And we've also identified there is an issue with communication. So, Mike, how does that resonate with you? Do you think there's an issue? Do you agree with Denise?
Communication is forever an issue. I don't care if it's in a marriage, a dating relationship, it will never be solved.
All right, what about you, Jenny? Is communication an issue?
Oh, totally.
Okay,
Yeah, I think there's positive ways to communicate and negative ways to communicate, and that's what I think.
what about you, JH?
Well, I said the word collaboration. And that, to me, that's a broader, a bigger word than communications. Because I can communicate one way with you, you can communicate one way with me, but if we don't never resolve and collaborate, we're not getting anything done.
So, true to form, you're taking the big vision. We know that you're a big visionary from all that you've said. And I would agree, but I also wish to quibble in the fact that if you don't speak the language, you don't understand. Par exemple, si je commence à vous parler en français, vous ne saurez pas ce que je dis, n'est-ce pas?
Oui.
Oui, vous parlez français?
Yeah. Petite.
Entonces, vamos a hablar en español. ¿Puede hablar también?
I'm trying to say no in Spanish, but hablo?
Немного,
No.
right? That's Russian. Немного. Я говорю
No, I don't know that one, no.
тоже по-русски. Right. So that
Out
is
of
my
league,
point.
yeah, right? Out of my league, right? Yeah.
And if I
yeah.
start talking to you in horse,
That's
I
right.
know you may not understand that.
I pay money to see that, please.
Well, I could do that, but you'd have to pay a lot, and I would use you as the sample stallion.
Yeah, right.
And you might find it a little bit disconcerting, my friend. But anyway, so you're absolutely right. Collaboration is important, but if you don't understand one another, if you don't have the language, you don't have the linguistic tools, if you listen but don't hear,
Yeah.
and you don't heed, I love that medieval word, you know, heed means to listen, to hear, and to be mindful,
Yeah.
you're not going to have collaboration.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, and-
collaboration is key because collaboration also involves a willingness to act. So you have taken this amazingly important concept, and it just can't be simplified in that way, I don't think. But that's another rabbit hole. Let's have lunch, and we'll go with that.
Well, and I guess a part of effective communication is that you and I can communicate all day long, and I can listen to you, I can hear you, but you still didn't move the needle. I still don't agree with you.
Right.
But there still could be effective communications in that category.
I don't doubt. And I don't doubt at all. And that's where agreeing to disagree and being respectful and courteous and mindful and articulate and well-informed. I mean, it's one thing to espouse something, but especially when you are representing a community, you better have your facts straight, or you're right. Now, there's this story about 3 blind men, and they want to know what an elephant is. And one of them feels the trunk, and the other one feels the foot, and another one feels the tail. And they all give you an accurate, factual rendition of what an elephant is. That's the trouble with facts, right? Still means that you can agree to disagree. But collaboration is what everybody wants, because I'm sure that even amongst the group of you trying to represent your constituents, not all your constituents agree. So what we want to do in the next little bit is wrap up with acknowledging, one, that we have a problem, or not a problem, an opportunity to hear better. 2, I'd like to go from here and as take up with what Jenny said, there is a positive way and a negative way to communicate. Jenny, since you kick that off, can you give me, what I'd like to do in the next few minutes is have just a pro and con, or good ways and bad ways, because you came up with this genius idea to communicate, right? And then we can try to make a quick sort of little credo for how you are going to move forward with that. Okay? So let's have pros and cons. What's a good way to communicate? What's a bad way?
Everybody's answering, right?
Yeah, but the onus is on you.
Go first.
The one who's been here long.
One of the things is talking about building a consensus with folks. One of the problems is everybody communicates uniquely.
Okay.
And so one person loves text, one person loves calls, one person might love emails, one person don't even want to talk, they just want to see hand signals.
So I'm going to put that down as
And so
both.
that's a pro, but that is also a challenge.
I actually was sitting here thinking something along the same lines, in that I've heard Jay McCord talk more than once about the multi-generational characteristics, and if you haven't heard him speak about that, you should. And his main point is to learn how someone listens.
Okay.
For instance, I may communicate through Snapchat with my teenagers, but my 90-year-old grandmother is not going to know how to do that. and she may want a letter or a card.
Right, right.
So that's like the main thing on communication is learning how someone listens.
So that's number one. Do you mean, just to drill a little deeper, Denise, do you mean how somebody listens or so how somebody hears? Is there a differentiation between listening and hearing?
Well, there is, so yeah,
So
we could,
which one do you prefer in the point that you just made? Or what is the differentiation? Which one represents your idea
Well,
best?
I used the word listen, so I guess that's what I want to say. If you hear, you don't always listen, so listening gets your point across.
Okay, so how people listen, meaning how they hear something with mindfulness?
How they process it, maybe?
Does everybody on the same page with that?
Yes.
Okay.
What,
What's a pro for you, Kevin?
well, I have more of a question, I think.
Yeah, sure.
To me, some people, when they communicate, they want a different level of communication. I don't necessarily need to know the nuts and bolts, and somebody else might. I'm more of a 10,000 feet view person, you know.
Okay.
So I think there's different.
So is that the complexities of communication?
Yes, I think so, you know. Well, somebody will have a child, and my wife will want to know, you know, when it was born, what did it weigh, all this stuff, and I feel pretty good that I remembered that the child was born. So, you know, it's just a different thing.
So what's a way that, if this comes up in your roles as commissioner, that you all could deal with this complexity and the levels if you don't need all that information or if you want more information?
I guess go to the source, I would think. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. I could ask Denise how much she wants to know and decide if I want to tell her. No. But, you know, I don't know how you would know if you didn't ask.
So what you're saying is you could define the amount of information you need?
Yes, I could, yeah,
Find details.
myself.
Find details, maybe?
So what I'm hearing is that the complexity of communication and the levels of communication, because people process information differently, some people will like vomit words on you and other people will withhold words. So if you want to have clear communication as a commissioner with whatever you're doing, it sounds like to me what I'm hearing is that you need to find out what kind of communication works best for all of you or amongst all of you, and of course the people you're representing. So that involves learn how people listen. And then from what you're saying, what I'm extrapolating, and please correct me if I'm not hearing this right, what I'm extrapolating is that you as the listener who is hearing and processing, you need to let that individual know how the degree of information, the amount of information, the levels of communication that you need. Is that something that as a group of commissioners might work for you? Because what we're looking for is ways so that everybody gets on the same page. So it seems like to me that you all need to decide how you all are going to communicate best, depending on what you all do, and then with every issue, the complexity of information that you need. Does that seem to resonate with any of you or not?
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to always say I'm going to give you the 25-word answer or explanation at the start.
Okay.
And if I give you the 25-word explanation, then in your follow-up, your next question could be that, Jage, I need a little bit more. You sort of gauged me, tell me how much more you need.
Right.
When you put up their pros and cons, I thought about biased and unbiased communications as well.
Oh, so good.
People come to me with, give me the facts. And you got to be biased, you got to be unbiased. But if you're being biased, say, hey, this is where I am. If you're being unbiased, and I'm just going to get a set of facts.
Okay. So let me thank you for saying that's a super important point. if someone is biased, and if you want to include, if you want to make sure that your communications channels are clear, is one of the questions that you could ask, right? Because let's say you are the listener. You are the commissioner who wants to make sure that you are understanding what is being said. And you are telling me that you are comfortable with sort of saying, hey, tell me where you're coming from. What is that piece of information based on?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think we have to do that, yeah. With the community as well as with each other.
Yeah. How do you all feel about that?
Agree.
I agree with that. I also think, you know, a lot of information that we receive from citizens is verbal, and it's experiences. And your experience is still facts that should be considered. So just because it may be considered anecdotal, it can still be fact if it really happened.
What's an example? I mean, I don't disagree with you. I like what you're saying, but I'm trying to think of an example.
And I guess
practical
I'm saying, you know, all of our, when we get information, yes, we get written information, but we also have to take into account what has happened, the history that has happened leading up to the issue, and what people have experienced with that topic or person or whatever it may be.
I got you.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. Can you all close your eyes for a second? Everybody close your eyes. What color top is Haley wearing? White. Say white.
I think it's striped.
Striped?
She has one.
Well, she's not topless, that's true. Oh, yes, she is. No, don't look. No, just kidding. What about you, Jenny?
I
What
thought it was black with a white stripe, but I can't remember.
What about
Oh,
you?
you said Haley, oh, I think it's black as well.
What about you?
But she always wears
Earl?
black and white.
What is she?
I thought it was white with a black and brown on it.
Okay. You all did pretty well. You all are fashionistas. Take a look at what she's wearing. Okay? So that's great. A lot of times people, a lot of people,
I always say it's always black.
yeah. Sorry, Haley, to put you on the spot. My point there is that people can walk into a room and see different things and remember different things. That's why I told you the story about the man with the elephant. In many ways, truth with a small t is subjective. And there are some people, maybe quantum physicists, that believe that truth with a capital T is also subjective, like Einstein, who in his relativity of time, who said that 2 minutes to a young man sitting with a beautiful woman having a glass of wine gives him a different sense of time than that same young man sitting on an open flame on the stove. And that's apparently one of the ways he used to illustrate the relativity of time, special relativity of time. But it's true. We all, truth can be subjective. That makes it very, very hard for you as the compassionate, responsible commissioners, mayor, public servants that you are, to separate wheat from the chaff. Truth, small t, with truth, big T, right? That is a key component of communication. How are you going to resolve that? So you're not this T, but this T. Thank you for bringing that up, Denise. That was really good. Jenny, any thoughts on how to resolve to make sure it's not this, but this?
Talk,
Okay.
provide evidence and fact, stay on the subject.
Oh, that's a good one. Don't go down the rabbit hole?
Right.
Oh, too bad. I love the
This is what
rabbit
we're
holes.
reading about, this is what it's about, kind of thing.
Good thing the old Earl isn't here anymore.
Yeah.
Was he a rabbit hole chaser?
He would chase a rabbit as far as you wanted to go.
Oh, man. Well, it might be like Allison.
We were in competition. The competition was about your
But to his credit,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
he
like,
doesn't.
it might be like Alice in Wonderland, right? Who knows what you might
I
find.
thought it had your sandwich.
What do you think? What's a way to deal
I
with that?
was going to, about communications. there are 5 of us plus 1, or there's 1 of us plus 5. But to me, there's a level playing field. We got to keep the communications. If it's important for Jace to share with Earl, it'll be just as important to share with anybody else on the commission, and vice versa.
So how can that be done? Because that gets back to unique forms for communication, but your top value, you all 4 of you, whatever, we're saying that equality is one of the things that you believe in the most and that you practice the most. Well, if you all have different ways of communicating, how are you going to do what handsome guy over there, as he likes to be called, just said? How are you going to make yourselves accountable? Because that's part of this.
Could we all be accountable to, maybe you all used to do it, like if you talk to one person or just 2, and I ask you, why aren't you talking to other people? And anyway, so I think, and then I'm very guilty of that too. I had to work with Earl to resolve something to make sure that communication was open. So I saw that I needed to work on that, but what I observed in my experience was people were not talking to everybody. And that was an example set forth. Is that the goal of the group, to talk to everybody?
Well, if you look, from what I understand, I'm sorry, but from what I understand, you all have equal jurisdiction and power and whatever. I understand that, that's where you are set up. But more importantly, getting back to your values and who you are. You are all here for the same reason. You love this community and you want to serve it. So, you're all one body. So if the right hand is doing something and the left foot is doing something else, you're going to have a malfunction, it seems to me, right? So who's ever heard of Google Docs? You could share a Google Sheet, and that way you don't have to email everybody and look in an email thread or whatever. Now, some of you may not be that techie, but you might say, hey, Jenny, call and say, Jenny, this is Kevin. I talked to this person about these issues. I know that you are a detail person. Would you mind typing up, do you have a minute to type up this so that the whole team knows?
I don't know that we can do that. Yeah, we have to, we have open meetings laws.
Of course. So, and you will work that out however you want. I'm just using that as an example of some kind of system, because you all have different ways of communicating and formats, and you're busy, and you're da-da-da-da-da. I understand how communication can fall through the cracks. But you all were saying that the communication seems to be an issue here. Kevin, excuse me, you raised your hand earlier, and I cut you off.
Well, you were talking about the big T, little t things and how you can sometimes differentiate. And I think some of it comes from just experience. Because there's some things, like I told Earl about a fellow who had a problem with a water meter in his yard. It was sticking up too far or something. I don't think everybody wants to know that. Right. So in my experience, I have determined that that's not something that they want to know. But if it's something major, if the whole bottom half of a neighborhood is flooding, and I've had 7 conversations about it, then they definitely should know. So I just think having experience before and dealt with it before helps.
So maybe one of the things that you could, I'm trying to, again, hear what you're trying to say. Thank you for sharing that. So it sounds like that you all need to have some way to prioritize the kinds of communications that need to be shared. Is this true?
I do, because I don't want to know everything, and I don't think they do either. We all pretty much are self-employed and have stuff.
So that's a fabulous point. So it seems like to me, you need to find out how you're going to communicate. You need to figure out what needs to be communicated. You need to find a way to agree how much information needs to be communicated on each of these issues. And those will vary depending on, as you said, the records that you have, the needs that you have. I love J.H. saying the most important thing is a spirit of collaboration. You could run all of those through the rose-colored glasses of collaboration, with J.H. being your, coach and leader on that, just saying, hey, do you think this something needs to be collaborated on or shared with or whatever, to the degree of whatever. This is about helping you to figure out what you need to do and want to do. In the interest of time, yeah, sure.
For the betterment of us.
Yeah.
Sorry, Earl, but you're in a position there. I've always felt like when things come to me that I felt like everybody needs to know, there's two ways to get it to them. That's through me and that's through Earl. But first of all, I try to let the city manager know. Because sometimes the city manager will say, Mr. A, don't worry about it. I've got everybody covered. Sometimes, and then the city manager will do that. Sometimes the city manager, not Earl, because he hasn't been here long enough yet, will say, Mr. A, don't worry about it. I got it covered. But then I find out nobody else got the word about it. So again, that's that word about trust, that if I give it to someone and they say they're going to give it to everybody else, then that's on them. And then oftentimes I will just say, if you call and share something with me, I'll always say, be sure you let the rest of the commissioners know about it. Or we can talk all we want to talk one-on-one. We just can't talk when there's two or three of us, together.
Well, that's a really good point. How do you feel about that, Earl?
No, that's exactly what happens. And so, like, if someone calls and they're interested in a subject, so to Jenny's point, we were talking about a subject yesterday. Not everybody's going to care about that, and I can address her questions. But then there's times where I know that when she's asking something, I need to answer that to everybody because this is a broader policy discussion. That's an in-depth thing. And sometimes, like Mr. Atkins' point, we've talked about this. You probably want to let everybody else know because this is going to come up. And so that's when I try to make sure that I either mention it at a commission meeting or we send an email out or something just to make generally everyone aware. That's a hard thing. And then we're getting busy and then you get distracted and you're trying to do all that too. Sure. So that's hard. It's hard to not forget or to prevent forgetting to communicate to everybody sometimes too. That's hard.
Yeah.
I don't think with this particular commission group anyway, that anybody willfully withholds anything from anybody.
Sure.
I think it's either oversight or we just forgot or
didn't get to it yet, that kind of thing.
Life happens and
Right.
and
Sometimes
we don't do it.
sometimes we can't get to who we need to before a meeting or whatever. I'm just now having a little bit of an epiphany here.
Excellent.
Breakthrough, that's what it's called, right?
Right.
I think, well, I know that 4 of us went through a traumatic experience last year, outside of the pandemic.
Okay.
So I believe that we all trust Earl completely as our city manager. And we haven't always had that trust in the person in that role. Therefore, this is deep. I'm going deep here.
I love it, girlfriend. Bring it on.
Find a rabbit.
Therefore, that creates the lack of trust or competence in our city manager, creates more chatter among the 5 of us. In the last, what are we going on, 6 months? 6 months, there's been less chatter, I call it chatter, between us because it's not necessary. And Earl has done a good job of helping to facilitate our communication. Through him, we should communicate through him most of the time. He can send something to all of us and then say, I can meet with you individually or 2 at a time. So that's kind of a breakthrough I've just had right now.
We should all bow.
Well, he has done a great job in eliminating
Does
a lot
that
of
make sense? I mean,
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
did I kind of just verbalize?
Thank you, Denise, for that very poignant and powerful recognition. Did I read, though, that Earl is like a temporary city manager?
No, not
or are
now.
you
He
full-time
was.
now?
Yeah.
So you must never leave.
That's exactly what I told him.
We'll drag him out of here by his
So I think you should pull your pennies together and get a ball and chain and attach it to him, since he
Yeah.
seems to be a keystone of this organization and your effectiveness.
Well, I think that our form of government's a little wonky, and so people who come from outside in don't really fully understand it. And so I think that it's it inherently has some communication problems from the start. And that's why I think Earl's done such a good job stepping in, because he's been here since 1837, I think, so, right, as city manager.
He was
city
too
engineer.
in swaddling clothes.
Yes, yes.
You got to remember, we're a service organization too, and the citizens that call, they don't have an understanding always, they know who they voted for. And so like, we've got to always remember somehow to not forget that in administrative roles. I think oftentimes it's forgotten, but we have to, that's a two-way street, the expectation of a citizen versus what we understand to be a structure. We have to always balance that. We can't forget that.
Well, and I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. And Earl would not be sitting in that chair had we not gone through what we went through last year. Outside of the pandemic, we had other things going on. And Earl, had, as far as I know, Earl had no intentions of being our city manager prior to June of last year.
Never crossed my mind, to be honest with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Those
in
are
the,
the things that work best, that just a higher power kind of working through everything. And I was also going to say I've really appreciated Earl, because I think that's kind of the common link too, that I'm glad we can all agree to like go to one main source and then to each other. That'll be good for communication in the future.
Earl, you're the man.
No. No, but
In the next 4 minutes here, what are your main takeaways? If each person could share, however you want to. We'll call Denise first, even though she had the aha, or maybe does your aha moment count as your main contribution?
That was my aha moment.
Okay.
Because, usually there's not a lot of communication when things are good. So, I guess I don't
When
mean
they're,
not.
when they're flowing smoothly, maybe.
Right. There's not a lot of conversation, when things are good. And then all of a sudden, if something happens and people don't like it or it's not working, that's when you hear a lot of chatter and a lot of opinions and a lot of information. I just want to make sure that maybe we define what facts are. Facts to me are not necessarily in black and white.
Okay. Fact finding.
Because I'm not a detailed person. I'm not.
Well, you got Jenny, and she's
Right.
she's the man in her department.
So if I call Jenny and say, okay, we have this issue coming up, and this is the history. I think you need to know what has happened to this point. This is my experience. This is the experience that people have called and told me. Those are still facts.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, and you might want to share and come to a consensus beforehand. Does anyone else have any takeaway from the hard work that you all have done?
I'm impressed by the number of commonalities we have.
That's what I was gonna say, Mike.
Yeah.
Ooh, I beat you at something, huh?
All the time.
Yeah, right.
That, and I'd still like to hear, if you've got a second, on what's the best way for me to let Denise know how I like to be communicated with and what information I want to know, or should we just run it through Earl and let him, vet it that
Well,
way? I'm not sure.
In the interest of your time, what I'm going to do is, I took these notes mostly for me, but also for you to be able to reflect on, so that, because I will write up a report of what I heard. It'll be a draft. You all then can say, oh, but I heard this and you didn't put this down or whatever. That's where I need all your listening skills, because I'm trying to hear what you're saying, process it, write it down, and extrapolate from things that you might have said. That's why I keep asking for your clarification and all of that. And being the very imperfect human being that I am, there probably are things that aren't there. The importance of doing all of this is to show you and your community, whoever may be listening or watching, how dedicated you are, how much you care, the great service that you've given, how common your values are, the things that you care about, and also, if there's chatter out there, it's legitimate because you've had some really typical issues, like, you know, very busy, a lot going on the platter, some people communicate differently, civic responsibilities, you can't do Google Docs or whoever. Those are really, really concrete issues that take well-intentioned, hardworking, generous, kind, smart people with different strengths and boop their gaps in the communication. That's fine. In terms of action steps going forward, I can write up what you want. I can also come back if if we want to take this, different, or even do something like, what are the top issues that you are each struggling with, and how are you going to come together, prioritize those, and solve them? And get your constituents on board, and help your youth, and do all these things that you want to do. Mm-hmm. The reason why I came is that I heard from some of you that communication was an issue, and that's why I wanted to do the values thing, and how magnificent that there's only one person who made that a top value, despite the fact that you have all these values in common, right? But like J.H. said, you cannot have collaboration if you are not communicating clearly. So you all have some homework to do. I will write up some of the things that you've mentioned for you all to determine how you want to go forward. I would recommend, I love breaking bread and getting together over a meal, et cetera, et cetera. I know our mayor loves that because I've been to many good meals at his house. And so that's a wonderful way to get to know one another, to share, to have differing opinions, whatever, but to keep this dialogue going, because you all are really amazing. Yes, my friend.
Well, that was what I was going to suggest. If y'all wanted her to come back, we could invite her back to one of our budget meetings, the first 30 minutes to talk more if y'all want to. So she's going to reach some conclusions, and she's going to provide some summary for us. If y'all want her to spend 30 minutes doing that, we could set aside 30 minutes.
I'm curious, have you read the book, Move Your Bus?
I haven't, but who was it? Did you tell me about that, Mike? Somebody tell me about that.
Earl gave that.
You told me about that, yeah.
And the management team.
Yeah, no, but it's on.
And we've never really discussed it.
Well, I could
as
read
a
that and we could
commission.
work through it or whatever you want. I am here, I live 12 miles away. And this is what working with my horses and writing are the things that I am doing. And I love empowering people. I am not an expert in city government of Danville. I'm not an expert in any one of you. My passion is to empower people and groups to embrace and whatever they want to embrace and achieve it. So when I come to my conclusions, they're really going to be what I heard and what I thought I processed when I was listening, for you to decide if that is what you heard and how you want to act. We didn't quite have enough time, and I didn't think we would, and I told Mike this at the onset. I said, we can accomplish getting to know one another. We can accomplish identifying what values we have and what our issues are. Forwarding the action is another conversation, because you've got a lot of processing to do. And you have a lot of great things to talk about, right, amongst each other. I want to ask you about all the changes in race relations you've experienced and what's that like. I'm going to tell you one last story, right? My parents were both journalists and writers, and my sister and my mother worked at Time Life. My father worked at Newsweek, Saturday Evening Post. Remember, I'm a New Yorker, right? And there was this very famous photographer at Life magazine, where my mother was working, named Gordon Parks. And he did a movie called Shaft, and he was a very, very famous African-American photographer. Have you ever heard of him? And so Gordon and Liz, Gordon married a woman 30 years younger who was probably the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. She's an African-American model, Liz Parks, stunningly beautiful. And you could walk down the streets with her in Manhattan and people would stop and just look at her. Gordon and Liz were my sister's godparents, right? Because Gordon took my mother under his wing when she was working. And one day back in the 60s, Gordon and Liz drove up to our ramshackle house in Irvington, New York, in his beautiful Jaguar. And he gets out with fantastically beautiful Liz, and he's there, hey, baby. And this spectacularly beautiful, very strong African-American man gets out. And I come running out the door. I was probably 6. And I said, Liz, Gordon. And my father comes out, and Liz comes up the steps, and he wraps his arms around Liz and gives her a big kiss. And the very strong black man says to Gordon angrily, why did you let that white man kiss your wife? I looked down at my skin, and I was mortified. I saw the color difference for the first time, and I felt terrible that these two people, this amazing man, Gordon, who's so talented, and this the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, who were godparents, somehow I was bad. It was wrong that I was white. Turns out that young man had a name that you all may know. At that time, it was Cassius Clay. He would not come in our house. And I heard he was very famous. And the famous, strong, beautiful man wouldn't come in our house. Instead, he went out on our porch, where my brother, who had a severe classical illness and was in a wheelchair at age 9, in his pajamas, and Ali went and sat with my brother and was fascinated by my brother. My brother was very outgoing. Blah, blah, blah. Gordon Parks whipped out his camera and started taking pictures of Ali and my brother. And I remember I was a very shy child, and I hid behind the chair, and I thought, this is so horrible that I'm white. This is so terrible that I'm white. I don't belong. I can't have Liz as my sister's godparent anymore. Because this was probably 63 or 64, maybe 65, 60, I don't know. I was 5 or 6 at the time. It shocked me. It shocked me to understand that. So your experiences that you have had is something so rich to share with everybody, and certainly everybody on your commission, as is your experience in Zambia, as the zillion, gazillion experiences you've had, whether it's flying or cooking or many business. I mean, come on. And you, all the things that you've done, and you've lived here your whole community. And you've lived everywhere, and you've been a commissioner 18 years. What riches you all have. And if only because some people use one form of communication more than another, so be it. So be it. And I'm sorry to go down that rabbit hole, but it's something that I never see a picture of Ali, and I don't think about the onus, the horror, the shame that we have of, judging people.
My mother met Muhammad Ali, and she's always said, that's the most beautiful man I ever saw. And that's the word, she beautiful.
He was.
He's the most beautiful man I ever saw. I mean.
And I was 5 or 6, right? So I wasn't used to sort of checking out men at 5 or 6. Yeah. But he was gorgeous. And somewhere, I'll have to get my brother to send us that picture of my brother in his pajamas, in his wheelchair, and Ali is just fascinated. He was so kind. All the anger and vehemence I saw him direct towards my father, completely gone, talking to a disabled child. No, but I think he could understand vulnerability, and he could understand pain. Yeah. And he could understand disenfranchisement, and he could understand being on the fringes. And anyway, end of story, you all. Thank you so much for inviting me in. I've really, I love this opportunity to help you help your amazing community. And I'd love to help you more. You just, you know my number, you know my email, you know where I am. I just want to thank you so much.
Well, one of the things I think I'd like to do personally is go back and revisit those items that are on the board in the commissioner's room. And let's go back and look and see how many of them are still applicable, how many of them have been accomplished, and those that haven't. Let's figure out what a direction is with those left. And do we need to add? Are there other things out there we need to add too?
Earl, we didn't answer your question, but I personally would like to have Susanna come back and share her report with us in front of one of our budget meetings.
I'm wondering if the commission would indulge me in, those of you that have read the book, if you would just like to say what you think you are, according to the Move Your Bus book.
You want to save that or let her read it so she can gauge?
I kind of wanted to know.
Because I've got a copy laying in there. I got one left.
Can you give it to me and I'll read it?
Yeah, you'll read it like, it's so good, you just read it.
So you're saying to not say it,
Just let her read it first.
to not,
And then when she comes back, then,
Yeah, because I'll
to
probably
not
have,
influence her?
well, she's going to have an opinion after reading the book, having met you all.
but I also will want to ask questions when I know a little bit the framework, because I'm not interested in you hearing my opinion really on anything. What I'm interested in doing is helping you all to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. So when I read this book and I know a little bit more, and I might say, well, Denise, what made you think that? Well, how would that make you interact with Jenny? Does that make sense? Because I'm not the expert of you all. I'm not a consultant telling you what to do. You are elected to do things that you have promised to your constituents. I'm just here to help you achieve the goals and get the work done if you have a roadblock. End of story. Thank you so much for your time. Really
Thank you.
appreciate all. Did anyone eat? I didn't see anyone eating. But then again, I
We
was
did at the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Because we were hungry when I-
I mean, talk about going down rabbit holes. I just find everything so much fun that it's like, party!
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Madam and gentlemen, any discussion? All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We are adjourned.